Okay, so this post, we're going to do completely different as far as the prototyping goes, as far as the mortises. So we're not going to use a router at all, as far as I can recall. Instead, it's going to be a drill press, and it's going to be the same template that we've been using all along. It's just all the same template, right? So the first thing I need to do is set up the drill press. This is the one I take camping with me. Again, I'm not sponsored by anybody. So, but I've had a couple of wins, and you know, for 80, 90 bucks or something, they've actually worked out pretty well. Again, people complain about this or that. Well, you paid 90 bucks for it, right? Versus something like that you might pay, what, 1,500, 2,000 for or more. So anyways, for camping and everything that I do, I like to set them up for single use, and then that works out pretty well. I did the same thing over here with the steel, where I set that up to make the do-it-yourself threaded tenons, right? But then just leave them, because look at, you know, a lot of this stuff, it just doesn't work after a while. This stuff falls off. But the deal is it still makes a hole. So I'm going to set that up on a micro bench. And if you look at the micro benches that I've made in the past, and the instructable build a micro bench from 2 stair treads, you'll see that this isn't the one. It's similar to it, but this could be it. I don't know. Anyhow, but there's these holes right here, okay? And those holes have a purpose. It's this one, these 3 holes right here, this one, and this one, and there's another set on the other side, but too much stuff on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the drill press on there for this part of mortising. Just to keep it simple, I actually use my threaded tenons on these things as well. It just makes it simple, because then I don't need a different wrench or anything like that. But all I'm going to do is then take these guys and put them down in the holes. The holes match the drill press, so I can, and you only need 2 of them really. Okay, so I'm going to put those in there. Again, sticking to the same tool that I use on the threaded tenons. That's the tool that fits in here, one of them. There we go. And then just kind of getting the drill press ready. You know, a lot of times they wear out, the labels on the bits, right? Drill bits. So I'm just double checking, but basically I have 0.73972. So it's not a quarter, it's not 3/4. I think I'm gonna get a 3/4. How about that? It works. So I'm all set up for the drill press. Now I'm gonna head over to a table. And I could do this on a micro bench, but this is actually gonna work out, I think, fairly well. Let me just get set up. All right, so on the other post, what we did is we took we put the mortises on the same plane as this thing where it ended, right? This is the triple lamb, your outer bread, your meat, or your PB&J, peanut butter jelly in the middle, but your sandwich, right? So I'm using this surface here as opposed to switching it around on this one. So I had the other one I took, and they're basically a 30-inch post, pretty close to 30. So keeping consistency, I'm measuring up from the bottom and doing a 15-inch. Again, these are varnished, so a little bit of pencil mark won't hurt. It'll come off in a little bit. And then on this one, we're going to make it reversible. So I'm going to put a 5-hole tenon, whether it be a DIY, do-it-yourselfer, or it be the fabricated kind, right? I'm going to put a 5-hole on one side, and then we're going to set it up for a 3-hole on the other side. So again, one side, this is going to get a DIY 5-hole. Well, it's 3-hole, but it's 2 3/4 by 3/4. Or it's going to get what I call a 5-hole, which is similar in size. It uses the same mortise, right? But on the other side, I'm going to set it up for this. And again, I don't do DIYs on those. They're just too small, and it's 5/8 wide, and it's too hard to get the material, the 5/8 inch flat bar. But it also is going to work with these washers that I get made up, or a person could quite easily make those. Again, if you can get 5/8 inch flat bar, it's just a little harder to find. And then it's cutting it and then drilling a hole and it becomes a washer. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to do the same thing I did before. So on this side, I'll start with the 5-hole. So again, on the template, I've got a 5-hole here. And as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then I also have a 3-hole set up on this one. This was the mortise that we used earlier with the router that either did that one or that one. And then this is the one that we did the router on that did like that guy there, or that guy, and we mortised into the wood. This time we're going to use a drill press. So again, my mark is right here, and then here's my 5-hole, and then here's my peephole. I always have a peephole at the center hole. So then, I don't know if the camera, I don't think the camera is going to reach down in there, plus there's a little shadowing going on, right? So I've got my line, can't see it very well. Let's make it a little darker, all right? And then I'm going to bring that over the top. And if it's hard to see, it's hard to see because of some shadowing that I've got going on right now with the lighting. So I have to find it myself. There we go. Okay, so I've got it. So I'm lining that up with this hole right here with the line. I could put it in there, that one's fine. When you get into these, it's a little different because, you know, where is center on this, where is center on this, and that's why the peephole comes in handy, but you almost don't even need it on these, okay? So now that I have that, I don't even have to use any kind of clamps or anything. As long as you're somewhat gentle, I'm just going to switch over to the other side, make it a little easier to view. But you don't even have to clamp it. Instead, if we just put some weight on it like this, and then all I'm going to do is this is that 7/64 snappy hinge bit, which again has just a little under a 1/4 inch OD on that outside. Again, if you're uncomfortable with it moving, you can just put a simple clamp on it, but again, as long as this was made to 4.5 inches, then this is going to hold it right on there. So now you can see I have 5 holes right there, right? And then it's a matter of using those holes for different purposes, okay? But all we're going to do is take them over to the drill press for this particular step. Okay, and then you're going to want to have a drill press that does have a stop like that comes in pretty handy. Now, if you don't, it's not the end of the world, but it just keeps more accuracy. So what I'm going to do is I'm kind of doing a little bit of a setup right now. That first pass is a setup, and I'm going to take it. It doesn't make any difference which hole I use, but I'm just going to start with one of the end ones. And basically what's going on is there's a dimple. There's a really sharp point on the end of on the end of Forstner bits. It's right in the center there, and then that's what's going to go into that hole that I just made with the hinge bit. Okay, this is all we got to do. And what that does is it prevents the Forstner bit from jumping, because they do like to jump. The other part of that is I'm not using any kind of fence. All right, there's no fence, and I'm not fastening down. So we do want a little bit of play in there. We don't want it to be, you're not going to see that. And we do want a little bit of room to move inside there, right? Okay. Now that works great. And you can see why this is part of the patent was that shape. And the shape is because you can then do drill press to make this without a router. So there's no router in this thing. Now, when we get into our DIYs, obviously, does a square peg fit in a round hole. By the way, round does fit in square, but square does not fit in round. So I am not a chisel kind of person, but this is almost one of the first times I've ever had to do this, but I wanted to show you how to basically convert this kind of mortise, if you don't do routering, convert that to fit this type of tenon, a DIY tenon. Now, there are woodworkers out there that are going to look at this and cringe because they're going like, he's doing what? How? He's not holding it right, whatever. I have no idea how to chisel, but what I do know is if I put that there like that, and again, this is hardwood, right? This is red oak, so I'm doing the best I can. All right, do another one here. And then that one looks like it already kind of took care of itself. And what I don't have handy, but they do make a tool that can do some corners for you. It wouldn't really work here anyhow. So basically that's that side. I'll go ahead and do the other side. Again, what not to do, right? But I didn't do this end down here, so that was made with the Forstner, right? And again, you're not dealing with a mortise that's 3 inches or 4 inches deep. You're dealing with one that's only 3/8 of an inch deep. So you now have what you need. It's not pretty, right? It's not pretty. And then it needs a little bit of cleanup. Now that is close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades, okay? And again, these are already mounted on the ends, basically the what do you call it? The end grain of the rails that are going to go on there. So a couple of important things are to try to keep the bottom level, but it'll kind of straighten itself out. And again, you know, if I had more time, I would do a better job at doing that. And then it's probably one of those times where it wouldn't have hurt to go down deeper with the drill bit, because then you have basically some room for error. So that's gonna be good for that one. And I'll just bring in a piece to show. So this was one of those DIY tenons that we did, right? And then it's just gonna sit on top of there and go right in, and then we have a nice fit. I am not tightening it down at all because I don't have any way to do that yet. That's why we're going to flip the board over now and do the other side. Now, if you were in a real pinch, again, you don't have a drill press, you don't have any big drill presses, you can actually do what I'm going to do with a drill press. You could do it with a handheld drill, but again, I'm taking I'll do the same process, which is one of the typical 3/8 inch Forstner, or excuse me, Craig bits with the collar. I'm setting the collar. Basically, it's going to go inside that mortise, so it's going to get down that deep, and then this tip is going to come out right through here somewhere, and that way you know you have a straight shot for a bolt that's going to have to go through there and end up at the same spot, right? But because I do have a drill press, and because I have a lot of other things riding on this, I'm gonna run it on the drill press, which you probably have already seen in one of the other videos. Okay, so when we did that Forstner bit, it again made a dimple, and there's nothing more accurate than that for not only starting the bit, but for also kind of, as long as you don't even use the fence, okay? I'm not going to put it on the fence right now. Instead, I'm going to rely on this thing to be flat to the surface, and then the bit to go straight, because it's, you know, it's a good drill press that'll do that. And again, this is this particular one is a Powermatic. It's, you know, it's a big one, and it has a 6-inch travel. If you don't have a drill press with a 6-inch travel, still use the drill press if you can, and at least get it started. And that way you have a nice straight shot going. And then the other thing I've done is get it as far as it'll go. And then you might need help lifting the table, but you actually can lift the table up while you're drilling, you know. And then again, this one I already set up so that you can see that amount of that travel, right? There's a huge amount of travel there. It's a woodworker's drill press, right? They finally got something right here on drill presses. But so I'm going to go ahead and start that. And then I'm going to run multiple, I'm going to go down and up and down and up. It's something about those Craig bits that it'll feed for a while, but then it'll get up to that part where it doesn't want to, there's no exit on it. So I'm just going to do that a number of times, right? All right, should be all the way through, and that's what we're looking for again. On the other side is just a tiny dimple. We only want that little tiny end of it. We don't want the whole thing. Again, because if we were going to put a Forstner on here, the Forstner will jump on a 3/8 inch hole. It'll go all over the place, but it won't typically on a small hole like that. So we're good to go on that part of it. Okay, again, no clamps, nothing. It's just sitting on a table, right? Okay, now we have that hole there, right? So I'm going to take my speed square, make a line, and then rather than measuring, because if you measure, then you may be wrong because that drill bit could have gone astray on you. Now this time, again, I want to make this post basically reversible because if it's a prototype. So on the previous one, we did a 5-hole or an inch. It's a 2 3/4 inch for, you know, that size, right? This time I'm going to do it for the little guy, which is this one right here. Okay, so let's start by using that part of the jig. I don't have to change anything out. The template, the jig is all set to go. And again, I'm gonna look down in my peephole, and I can see that I can see that hole that the dimple made or coming from the Craig on the other side. So again, that's all that's to it. I'm just going to hold this here. No clamps. Look, Ma, no clamps. And the reason that center one went in so easy because it went into an existing hole. So now we have that going on, right? Again, we're going to be using a Forstner, and that baby would have jumped all over the place. So what I'm going to do is, okay, I had two choices. One is I could go and I could change the drill press because this would typically take a smaller bit. This would take more like a 5/8 or I think a 17 millimeter or something. I have to kind of go look at that in terms of the metric size. But these are 5/8 across, and so usually just a little larger than that. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave it at the 3/4 bit. Actually, it's a 20 millimeter that I got in there right now. And I'll show you what I mean, that there's a likelihood that there could be some jump possibilities there. That's why I typically go to a smaller bit, but we'll see what happens. Okay, 3 holes this time. So I've got that 20 millimeter in there. Now you can see how close I'm getting to the edge of that bit, and if that had been a 3/8 inch coming through there, this bit would be jumping all over the place. Again, the camera may not pick this up, but that little Sharpie point is very visible. It's because the rest of it becomes transparent. It's very easy to see. Now, there you go. What you have there is a couple of things. One is we now have our mortise, right? But it also brings through the 3/8 inch hole that we put in earlier on the drill press, because that's where we stopped that Craig bit, right? Down below the surface. So let's just see how this fits. So again, that's major overkill. You don't need that much space, but it's not going to hurt, because again, once you put that bolt on there and you tighten it, this baby's not going to move anyhow. And so it doesn't hurt to have it, but I would, if I was going to do a whole bunch of them, I'd be doing them all the same anyhow. Then I'd set up a bit for this particular size, right? But I've got what I need there, and then I also have a hole that goes through to the other side. So let me get a piece to test on that. Okay, so for instance, here's this is prototype number 1 of the MikroRail, right? All beat up, you know, all scrap material. But on the end of that is that 3-hole tenon. That's the round version. Now, you can do your own DIYs of these as well, doing it exactly the same way. You would punch that, punch that. It's easier because it's only 3, right? And then when you do the tenons, you would use 5/8" material. Again, these are designed, the reason they're smaller is because everything up until now has been 1 inch across, right? But 3/4 inch lumber is so common and is so available that if you went to a 3/4 inch tenon, then you don't have a shoulder, right? And you're probably going to see a little bit of the edge of the mortise and things like that. So by going down to the smaller size, that allowed it to go into the whole different spectrum of materials, right? So, but you can get 5/8 by 1/4 in flat, in mild steel. I think you can get it in aluminum. I'm not sure. And then I'm not sure about stainless steel if you're doing outdoor stuff. But outdoor stuff is usually going to be bigger anyhow. Then you want to go to the larger tenon. So, but basically, here's what I've got. So that is same thing. It's going to sit right on top like that. And again, it's a little tough doing a demo vertically. It's actually very tough doing it vertically. So, but I can still try, right? So I'm going to put that there. I'm just going to set it in there somehow. And then I'm not going to get crazy on the bolt. I'm just going to use a regular bolt. Now that one's not long enough. That one's not long enough because I need to go with a longer bolt. So again, all the reason to prototype, right? By prototyping, I mean, I would have known, especially if I designed it, you know, in 3D, then I would have known that when that baby goes in there, it's not going to have enough to grab on to that. So I've got a real simple fix for that. So rather than making the mortise deeper on this side, we're going to go back to the drill press for a second. And we're actually going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Now again, this is prototyping, so everything, a lot of stuff is just on the fly, right? But what I've got here is it's going to be a little tough. That bit is going to want to jump because of the 3/8 inch hole now. But if I get her down there and I line it up, and it's a drill press versus a handheld, right? And I'm careful at the beginning. Once it does start, then it'll be just fine. Now the problem is that we've got this set, right? So it's stopping it from going any deeper. So again, if I was doing a whole bunch of these, I wouldn't want to do this because I don't want to change a setting. But what I'm going to do is just change that by, oh, let's say a 1/2 inch. Now, when I go down in there, hopefully, I've got plenty of depth, right? Plus, I now have a space for a washer in there. Let's try that out. Again, you're seeing a lot of this in real time. It's just figuring it out as we go. I do have to find a washer, so excuse me. Oh, here's one. I have one. And I'm using that was part of the design of the hole size, was to make sure it's large enough for that type of hole, right? And then there's my bolt, and I can tell it's going to make it because it bounced off. Actually, that's my dog's bed. But now I can see that all that material sticking out. And again, that's why we have to put in remember, if you recall, when we mounted these, we drilled a 3/8 inch hole that went in a ways to accept that additional bolt that's going to be there in there. So now I'm just setting it on there. My hand is on the other side, just hand turning it. Now I've got a wrench on it. And as soon as you get that, once you get that thread in there, there's not much else you really have to do. And it's a lot of extra thread. I don't normally have that much extra thread. I just kind of try to eyeball it to get it more precise. Okay, snugged it up a little bit. And again, you could do that with these, right? In fact, if you're making beds or you're making other things to, they say, sell or give to other people, this is probably what you're going to want to give to them, because number one, they're going to lose that. Number two, you don't want them to have too much torque. You don't need that much torque. Certainly try to avoid, and I've almost always tried to avoid hex, because people are going to really over torque it and they don't need to. So now what you have is, again, it's tough to do vertically, but you have that there. And then remember, we made that tenon or that mortise extra large and much larger than it needed to be. And if I took a close look at this, in fact, if I ran a speed square on there, I can see it's just a hair off, like right here. It's a little wider. So if I went around the other side, just loosen that up, then I could tweak this. But I can't tweak it right now. It's way too tight, even just with a hand wrench. So I can't get it off with that. It was too tight for that. Okay, just loosening it up enough. And then again, normally you're going to be doing this in a horizontal mode. So now if I get that lined up right, I could put a mark on it, but there she goes. She's lined up perfectly now. Allen snug it up and that baby's good to go. And there's going to be such a nice tight joint right here. And in fact, I'll just go ahead and snug it up. It may not be perfectly lined up, but I am going to put the camera down there as close as I can get it, and then we're just going to watch that snug up. And try this with a regular mortise and tenon. It is not going to happen. And again, now I'm snugging it. You can see that draw together. Again, keeping in mind that this is rough sawn. This was done with a bandsaw. This was not done on a jointer, right? And so to get, and I'm still not tightened up yet. There you go. I still have even more to snug. And that is basically as close as you're ever going to get on rough sawn to a perfect joint. I'm very, very pleased with how that's going to work out.